Hi, JM. How are you doing tonight?
Hey, how you doing, Kevin?
I'm doing fantastic. I've been looking forward to this all week, this our interview because I've been listening to this upcoming album that you have coming out, and I'm just anxious to hear about it from right from your mouth. Very excited about that.
All right, man. Well, that's a nice thing to hear.
I'm very sincere about that too. Very
Yeah,
sincere.
thanks, man.
Um, I just want to take a moment to introduce my future viewers to you. This is JM Stevens. JM is an accomplished singer and songwriter, also an in-demand producer, engineer, session musician, working out of your own studio, East Austin Recording, right in Austin, Texas. And his sophomore album's coming out, Nowhere to Land, being released next week, April 12th. And I just want to thank you for making some time to talk today.
You bet, man.
All right.
Get me out of doing the yard work I was doing.
That's always a good thing to get out of.
Yeah.
Um, it's always interesting to find out how people get started in music. You know, I'm a musician also, and how we all found our love for it, and then the passion. It's more than just a, oh yeah, I like to listen to tunes. It's like, no, music is my 24/7. You know, as is yours, I
Right.
believe. You know,
Unfortunately, there's no way out at this point.
right. Um, so I just, I always like to find out, and if I understand correctly, your mom and your brother were both musicians, so you were around it growing up, and then you started your own band at the age of 12 after kind of seeing what they were doing.
Yeah, my mom was, singing in the church choir and pianist, and she's a pretty incredible soprano. I remember going to see her. She was in a local production there in Mississippi of The Sound of Music when I was a
Oh,
kid. And I remember going to see that and just seeing her up there, and you look like an angel with an aura around her glowing singing those parts. It's always
yeah,
stuck in my mind. But the interesting part about that is I don't ever remember there really being a stereo in my house growing up. There wasn't like music playing. People just played their own music.
yeah.
I remember there was a record player that was around, and there were some records in a drawer that I would have to go get out, and it was like which I still have a couple of them, like a Bo Diddley record and some Elvis stuff and things like that, and but there wasn't music playing in the house. It's really interesting to me because I'm the total opposite
Right,
now.
right.
Yeah.
So you were around it and you saw them perform and everything, and it just kind of inspired you. It wasn't the music that you were listening to of other artists, but it was your family just seeing them perform and seeing the enjoyment they seem to get out of it, and seeing the glow and everything.
Sure, and the thing that about that play is it was put on by this group. I'm just remembering this now that I'm telling you about
Yeah,
this. It was
yeah.
put on by this group called Music Coterie or something. It was just a little group there in West Point where I grew up. And the local barber, his name was Mike Hill, and he had really cool hair, and he played a Sunburst Strat. I just remember that, and I would just watch him. I would go watch their rehearsals, and I would see him play, and I was like, that's what I'm going to do. I don't want to be that guy.
Right, right.
I remember I'd go get my hair cut by him, and I'd ask him, about his electric guitar. I remember he it was distinctly had a huge distortion pedal. I think it was kind of a volume, maybe more of a volume pedal now I'm thinking about it, but I was just fascinated by it, fascinated
Right.
by him. And so it was more like people that were directly in my life more than like listening to artists. I mean, Elvis is the first I remember hearing, like being aware of. But
Yeah.
it's pretty much, I haven't, yes, pretty much the same still, so from and my mom pushed me into playing piano, which was smart, and she was smarter than I was because I didn't last long on it. I wish that I would have stuck with piano longer, but I wanted to switch to guitar because I mean, you're like 8 years old and it seems really cool,
Yeah, yeah.
But I seem to be I picked up the guitar quicker. It just kind of agreed with me, for whatever reason. And you get thrown into doing these horrifying trauma-inducing recitals and things that you have to do. It's
I
just
know it
fun.
all too well. Yes, 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 for sure.
And I was playing acoustic guitar, and my dad's uh, law partner at the time gave me a electric, and I didn't think it was very cool. It was an Epiphone hollow body electric, and I think I talked about this before somewhere else, but my brother and I just abused that thing. We wanted like a Warlock or a Flying V, and we mistreated that guitar. I didn't think it was cool. It had a silver tone amp with it, and years later, I ended up taking it to a guitar shop out here, and turns out it's the '61 Sorrento.
Wow.
Really cool guitar. So I got it all fixed up, of course, and now I still have it, It's
That's a good
amazing.
story. That's awesome. That's so neat. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's cool. It's like I got that thing when I was probably 8 years old. I tend to hang on to stuff. I don't like to have a lot of stuff. I like to have just a little bit of stuff that I like, and I keep it, you
I
know?
wish I could say I was like that. I do like to hang on to stuff. And unfortunately, I wouldn't call myself a pack rat, but maybe I don't know, music, I mean, books, CDs, records, just everything. But, but I can't seem to trim it down. I don't know. I need to trim that down. Have just the things. I take some advice from you. Just have the things you really like and really enjoy and keep them forever.
That's tough with guitars, but that's an expensive hobby. I've really gotten into harmonica lately. Those are fun. I was saying it's like collecting Hot Wheels or something. They're just a
Right?
little thing, and they hold so much emotion for just such a little instrument. I've really gotten into playing, and incorporating it into my shows. I've always dabbled, but I don't know, a few months ago, something just hit me like a bolt of lightning. It's like, go nuclear on harmonica. Like start playing it, get good at it. I just
That's
felt like I
great.
needed something because I'm doing solo shows. And it took me forever to find a rack that I liked. And I finally found one, and it changed everything for me. Like literally, this rack is just magnetic. And so when you're on stage, you're not fooling with it.
Right, right.
You know, and so yeah, I've really gotten into it. I don't know how we ended up on a harmonica tangent, but I've
No,
really gotten into it. I think it can just take the mind to just a whole other place, when it comes in, and even if you save it for the solo section or maybe for the outro. And I'm not talking fancy. I'm talking like hummable melodies, is
yeah,
what
yeah, yeah.
I try to strive for. Something that a beginner could play, which is, I'm certainly not saying I'm more than that. I'm just trying to get as accurate as I can on it, you
Yeah, no,
know?
that's really neat. I always enjoy I mean, hearing Stevie Wonder play harmonica. Like, you'll just hear he collaborates with so many people, all genres of music. You'll hear a solo, a harmonica solo from Stevie Wonder, and you'll say, that's Stevie Wonder. You just know it. It's just the style he plays.
I'll tell you, it's funny you mentioned that. I saw, I went and saw Elton John in San Antonio last year, and the first thing about the show is it was the worst traffic jam ever in the history of the world trying to get into that. There was something going on in San Antonio. It wasn't for the show, it was at the Alamo Dome.
Yeah.
It was my daughter and I, we were stuck like literally in one spot for like 3 hours, and we could see the Alamo Dome right there.
Oh
We
gosh.
couldn't get to it, right?
Right.
We finally get through into a neighborhood and ended up having to, there's nowhere to park. The thing is full. I ended up having to pay a guy off to let us park in his yard. And then we truck it across the the parking lot and get into the show. We thought we were going to miss the thing. We missed a few songs, and we got in. He was playing. I guess that's why they call it the blues.
Yeah, yeah.
It was such a powerful moment, just because it's like, wow, wow, he's playing that song, and I hadn't heard that in a long time. And I immediately went home and learned it, and I've been actually playing it live, like an acoustic version. But then, you know who did the solo, right? That's Stevie
Yeah.
Wonder.
Yeah, right.
Now, I haven't done that. I haven't implemented a harmonica into it yet. But now that we're sitting here talking about it, maybe I should. Not that I'm going to play a Stevie Wonder type solo, but I
That would
could
be
come up
really
with
cool though. That
something.
would be
You
really
know,
cool.
he's playing that. I think on a. I'm not sure on this, but I think he's playing on a chromatic harmonica, which they can't really do that in the rack. Really, it's a big
Right.
thing. I
Right.
might be wrong about that, but I know he plays a chromatic.
Yeah, yeah. it's funny you mentioned that song because I was looking at some of your different videos, YouTube videos and everything, and I saw the like the 1 minute warm up of that off stage, right? That you used. I guess that's why they call it the blues as a warm up song, kind of just to get yourself before you go out there.
I did do that. I forgot I did.
I
Did I
saw a
put that?
video of it.
Oh
Yeah.
man, I had to go rewatch that. Yeah, it is a good warm up. It's not an easy song.
No, no,
The
yeah.
tricky chords in that. Um, it's like a. I like to just throw little snips up sometimes like that, or just to cover the top of my head. I try not to think, just do it, put it up,
Yeah,
whatever.
don't record it
Song
50
that
times, just
I'm,
one time, one take and just do it, right?
song that I'm feeling, in that moment. It's a reason that you're feeling that, and if you start talking yourself out of it, then you're going to talk yourself out of it. But I did that same thing the other night with Wichita Lineman,
Oh, neat.
and man, I'm a huge Glenn Campbell fan, and Jimmy Webb, who wrote it, but. Uh, that song for me at least, it is tricky. The melody, the intervals in that melody, vocal melody, are some big jumps. And it's not a run-of-the-mill melody, and it ain't run-of-the-mill chords either.
No, no, no.
And
Right.
that song never really resolves. It's almost like a constant round. Like I would say it was an F major, uh, but it only goes there in the intro.
It doesn't end when, and it does, like you said, it never resolves at the end.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
doesn't. But what an amazing song. Was
It,
it
you
two
know,
and a
you,
half minutes?
what I'm
Maybe,
sorry, what'd you say?
maybe 2.5 minutes long.
Yeah, yeah, right, right. You just keep throwing things out that make me think of so many different things. It's crazy. We'll be on here all night. No, I'm joking, but if you like, so third grade, Rhinestone Cowboy. I couldn't play guitar, but I did Rhinestone Cowboy for a talent show at school. Third
Oh,
grade, I still
that's
remember,
right.
and I was just strumming a fake guitar, a toy guitar, and they had the
Yeah,
hat and the rhinestones and everything, singing Rhinestone Cowboy, Glenn Campbell, right? So
man. I
many
never,
years ago.
I never appreciated him much when I was younger. I just didn't, but that got me the sessions he's been on, and as a session player, and I mean,
Yeah.
records just unbelievable.
I didn't know that they asked him to be in the Beach Boys. Did you know that? They asked him to be a Beach Boy.
I didn't know that.
He was a session
Yeah,
musician for the Beach Boys, and they
yeah, I
asked
knew
him to
he
be a
was.
regular member, and he was like, I
Yeah,
can't,
yeah. I'm doing the session. I gotta go
Yeah, I
do.
couldn't believe it. What an honor and what a neat thing. I mean, he was a good guitar player. They asked him to be a Beach Boy.
There's a concert that I have watched a few times of him. It's on YouTube. It's it's from a theater somewhere, maybe in the early 2000s. He's got an orchestra behind him, and he's just playing all of those songs, and he's just so good.
Yeah.
It's just so effortless. It's like, man, that's something to be inspired by. He just like doesn't even try, and his voice sounds amazing. He's got to be in his 60s, maybe early 70s. I don't know. I don't know how
Wow.
old he was when he passed away, but
Yeah, he was so talented though. He's so talented. And when we're younger too, we don't always realize how talented. Like I said, you say, okay, he plays guitar, he sings, got a nice voice. As you get older and you're doing it yourself, you're playing and you're singing, like, oh my gosh, that guy's got a golden voice, and oh, he plays guitar like nothing. And he makes it, as you start getting into your craft of music, I'm sure you were like, whoa, yeah.
yeah. Well, I spent a lot of my years, playing in loud rock and roll bands, which I love. But I hit a point when I was like, I want to be able to. I started realizing that when I was breaking out doing some solo gigs, that the songs they just didn't quite work like that. And I was like, I got to write better songs. I got to write songs that I can sit here, like I was at a girlfriend's parents' house for the holidays, and they're like, play something for us, and I was like, I don't really have anything that I feel like I'm just gonna nail right now.
Right,
You know what I
right,
mean?
right.
I just it's like I'm gonna really get serious about like having songs that will work in any circumstance, whether it's fleshed out or solo.
Right.
And I just started playing solo anywhere I could, all the time, whenever, wherever, just to be in front of people doing it, just to torture myself and get better, and try out new songs.
Sure, sure.
And I still have hung on to that philosophy in some ways, you know.
I think it's a great philosophy. You know, if you get too much in your head of thinking about it, just go out there and do it. Just be in front of people and play for them and get opinions and ideas. And when you're playing, you think of something new and you're like, hey, if I had done it this way, or whatever,
Well, I say this: it's if you have a song and you've got it done, uh, let's say let's say you got two verses and two choruses, and maybe you got a little outro, and you feel pretty good about it. You know, you've got a good hook and melody, and you play it live. And there's been times when I'm like, and I like to play it pretty quick, after I've written it, like the next show, because
Right.
I just think it saves a lot of work thinking, because like you can feel the energy in the room and you can tell. But a lot of what's happened to me before is I'll get up there and I'll like play it in front of people and I'm like, this song needs a middle eight. You know
Yeah,
what I
yeah.
mean? Like
Right. You just feel
sometimes
it
you can
that
tell, you just feel it. It's just the earth tells you. I don't know, the people tell you. I don't know how to
that's kind of
describe
neat though, because like
it.
the song, yeah, yeah. I mean, because then your songwriting kind of can happen on the stage too. Like you're thinking about you're always, I mean, musicians, we're creative souls. We're always thinking, about our art of music. And I mean, I'm amateurish. I'm an amateur musician, and went to school to be a teacher and teach vocal lessons, play instruments.
Oh,
But I'm
wow.
not, and I write, but I never did anything with it. I always thought I would. Um, I always hoped to do it, but I think we're always thinking about it. So it's kind of neat that you're continuing your song on stage. You didn't put the pressure on it to have some perfect song in the studio because you brought it to the stage, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, yeah, it needs a middle eight. It needs something else. It needs, it's kind of a neat philosophy on that too.
Yeah, I think the perfection comment, I think, is, boy, that can really stifle you. Yeah, in the studio as well.
Yeah.
I try to just not lose sight of the big picture. And I feel like the older I get, I don't know if it's getting lazier or smarter or dumber. It could go either way, but it's like like not getting hung up on minutia as much, and just trying to keep a vibe going. You know,
I think it's more healthy.
it is, and because if the perfection thing I can slow things down.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying that you're going to slop it up.
No, no, but
I'm saying that, like, do a good take and maybe sit on it for a day and then listen to it and see how you feel about it, rather than
right,
pounding it.
right. So you were in Mississippi. You grew up in Mississippi, I believe, right? And then you had
I did.
moved to Austin and into Austin, Texas, and that's where you started a retro rock band called Moonlight Towers, correct?
Well, there was a few bands before that. When I got here, me and a couple of guys from Mississippi, we moved out here, and I was 20. I didn't know anybody or anything at all. I didn't know anybody here. I lived in a Super 8 motel, got several demeaning telemarketing jobs, and we got a rehearsal space out by the airport and storage unit. And the band eventually, didn't work out, and you start other bands and do stuff, and none of that I felt like was getting anywhere. And I bought a little 8-track digital recorder. It's one of the first ones, like a Roland VS880 it's called. And I just decided I was just going to kind of hole up in my room. It's like 6 roommates, just going to hole up in my back room. Had a drum kit in there, and I was just going to play all the instruments, and I was just going to just start trying to make something cool.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that it was good or anything. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but I recorded like 30 or 40 songs, just feeling them out. And I started kind of passing that around to some people, and somehow it got into some people's hands, and some people that I thought kind of knew what they were talking about. They're like, man, there's some really good stuff there, And I was like, oh, wow, okay. So ended up starting to put a band together around some of those songs, and that's what turned into Moonlight Towers. And we ended up making, 5 albums and EP, single, over a good span of time.
is it like maybe like I was reading maybe somewhere between 10 and 15 years, right?
Yeah, it's a good little chunk there.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
something I found interesting. I had seen on I forget if it was on iTunes. It must have to be on iTunes. But that you guys had recorded a live album at Shuba's in Chicago, and I'm from Chicago.
Oh, no
So
kidding.
yeah, so when I was a kid, and I mean, I still go once in the blue moon to Shuba's. Such a cool, intimate club. I was kind
It's
of
a
curious as to
great
how
room.
you got to do that, how you decided to pick that place.
Man, what a great room. Is it still going?
It's still going. To the best of my knowledge, I think they have some other room upstairs. They call it something different, or they have two theaters together that they own now. But as far as I know, but I mean, I saw Peter Wolf there, Jake Giles band, and that little stage there, and I don't know if you're familiar with Regina Spektor.
Yeah.
Um, so Regina Spektor, and then Train did a three-city like a residency. So he played 3 nights at Shuba's, 3 nights at Atlanta, and 3 nights somewhere else. And I happened to be able to get to go to that. And they recorded the first
Cool.
half of the show, gave us a CD at the end for the first half, and just magical. No, Rhett Miller from Old 97s.
Yeah.
Saw him there. He's a Texas guy, right? Rhett
I
Miller.
think Dallas,
He's
yeah.
from, yeah, I think so. And so he did a solo show there. And when you think about the size of that room, to see so many interesting voices and bands there. So it really caught my eye when I saw you guys had done a show there, a live show.
It's a great sounding room from what I remember, but I think that was, man, that must have been early 2000s. I don't remember when that live. We played there several times. Uh, yeah, we had a little thing going in Chicago there for a bit somehow. People liked us there, and the Shubas liked us, and that's how we
Yeah.
kept going back there. And then we recorded it, and I think they might have released that. I don't remember having anything to
Oh,
do with it.
really?
I think so, but I
I
could be
just
wrong, man.
I just happened to cross it. I always like to really do some deep research to know who I'm talking to, and it makes the conversation more interesting for you, for myself. And yeah, and so I saw that. I think it was 2006 that just from reading the recording, and I was gonna look at my ticket stubs to see if I had been at Shuba's anywhere near that timeline
Oh,
because I
wow,
was going to shows there.
it's almost 20 years ago, man.
I don't know where the time goes. I
I
have
don't
no
either,
idea.
man. I
Oh
tell
my
you.
goodness.
Yeah, had
So
some good times in Chicago for sure.
yeah, I've lived there my whole life. Yeah.
Okay, is that where you are
Yeah.
right now?
I'm in the
Okay,
western suburbs, about west of Chicago, but
gotcha,
I'm
gotcha.
40 minutes from
Okay,
Chicago.
cool. I played another place I played there. I was in Craig Finn's band for a little while and played at it's a bigger room. I can't think of what it's called all of a sudden. Is it an empty bottle, maybe?
Yeah, that's one of the clubs. Yeah, Empty Battle.
Maybe that was it.
Yeah, that's a cool club too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what's neat about it. There's a lot of neat clubs in Chicago, a lot of neat small places, some bigger venues, and I think when the Stones came here, they were doing that tour. They were doing a big show, a medium-sized show, and a small show, and I think that was like a perfect city to do that because when they came here, because we got kind of all that mid-sized, small, large thing.
Yeah, so much history there. Music history.
Oh, Chess Records and all the early things. Yeah, yeah,
Alan Wolf went there.
yeah.
Um, uh, I just watched a really good documentary about Howlin' Wolf. I'm playing at the Howlin' Wolf Museum in West Point, where I'm from, on this tour.
Neat.
It's a really cool place. They've got a lot of his stuff in there, and just it's a vibe.
Wow, that's really neat that you're going to actually do a show at the museum. That's great.
Yep. Yep.
We've
Yeah.
got Buddy Guy here in Chicago, of course. He's got his Buddy Guy's Legends club here, and been there once. Just different places like that. There's some really neat places in Chicago to kind of some of these neat clubs that have been around for a long time.
And the Chicago style pizza.
Oh yeah, you're killing me even
Nobody can
thinking
do
about
it.
this. Oh my goodness, yes.
Nobody can do it anywhere else that I don't know. There's some places here in Austin, but it ain't quite the same. I don't know
You know,
why that is, but
yeah, I don't need. I don't.
like
I
nobody
noticed when
can
I go.
make good gumbo here.
Yeah,
You know, I make my own.
yeah. Well, see, at least you know how to make it. Then just stick
Yeah.
with your own recipe, right? Yeah. When you were in Moonlight Towers, were you doing? You were leading the band. Were you doing most of the writing, or were you collaborating with other members of the band, or on the
Uh,
writing?
I would usually have kind of a catalyst, you know. I may have a song that was already done, but then it would usually end up somewhere and turn into something that I never quite imagined it would be.
Right.
But
Yeah.
that's what a band should do, you know?
Right.
Let everybody bring their thing. And of course, people have ideas, and I'd get my chops busted about some lyrics here and there, and that's fine. You know, I can take it. But yeah, for the most part, yeah.
And so then so after a while, then you did that for quite a while. And like you said, you were kind of itching to do something different. And I was wondering, I know that you have your studio now, East Austin Recording. And was some of that overlapping when you were starting to become an in-demand producer? Was that overlapping with your touring with Moonlight Towers? And you said, I got to give this up and do this full time? Or I mean, it's set, a solo musician too, of course. But I mean, like focusing more on your producing and your own music. Is that something that was happening at the same time as Moonlight Tower? And you had to,
Well, I'll back that up a little bit. In like the late 90s, so I'd mentioned I had that little rolling recorder in the
right.
rental, and that there was an empty garage in that rental house. And I decided that I was going to put a studio in that empty garage and kind of build it out a little bit. And everybody said I was crazy, and maybe I was, because it was a rental. But I ended up, I built a little studio out of that garage, bought a little 16 track tape machine, a little console, just had a very minimal setup.
Yeah.
I ended up making hundreds of albums out of that studio,
Wow.
along with playing and touring and doing all that.
Yeah.
So that was a little garage studio, and I made a lot of albums there from like 98 to '04, and then the landlord sold the house, so the studio was gone.
Oh,
So uh, I moved over to East Austin, and a producer guy that I was working with at the time was like, "Hey, would you want to start up a studio?" And he had a way to maybe build something a little more fleshed out, and I had some ideas, and we ended up doing it. And so that was 2007 when the studio came to be. The first session I did was for a radio station out of Cincinnati called Waxy.
yeah, I've heard of it. I'm not familiar. I've
Yeah.
never listened to it. I should with the internet, but I haven't. Yeah,
And
heard
so
of it
they
though.
came down, they were doing a South by Southwest thing, and they were like, I was still like figuring out how to hook. I didn't even have everything going yet,
Uh,
I'd never recorded anything in there. And they called me. Somehow they got my number. They're like, hey, we're coming down for South by Southwest,
right, right, right.
We want to do a radio broadcast out of a studio, and we're going to be doing 5 or 6 bands a day. It's going to be filmed and recorded live and streamed. This was before streaming. They had some way that they were doing it,
Really? Yeah, interesting.
Maybe they were taping it. I know what it was. It was the audio was broadcast live,
Okay.
and then they were taking video and they were posting up videos like that night, onto YouTube of the sessions.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, I can do that. I'm ready. And totally just threw myself in the fire on that. And so the night before they showed up, I called some friends of mine. I said, y'all got to come over here. I got to record something in the studio and make sure everything works. And I did. And then I ended up doing those sessions, and it was literally 5 or 6 bands a day for like 7 days in a row. I mean, it almost killed me, but I really got the room figured out. All the
Yeah, it's a good chance to
stuff
do that,
worked
right? With
out.
so much repetition like that.
I'm just the whole time I'm just acting like everything's great and smooth, and I'm literally beads of sweat pouring off. So that's when that studio. So I've always done uh, both. It's always been one and the same. It's like I got into recording when I was really young.
Hmm.
I was fascinated by it. Like my teenage bands. My brother had a 4-track. It's a little AMR, PV AMR 4-track they made, cassette 4-track. And I was
Right.
just like, I want to do that thing.
Yeah.
I just got fascinated with it and started recording, hooking. I mean, I remember making stuff like hooking 2 VCRs together through a PV mixer to make a multi-track recorder.
Right. Right. That's great.
I've always done it. And so It's been a natural evolution.
Yeah.
I haven't
Yeah.
really had any formal training. I have had some mentors along the way that, somebody I could call up that I really knows what they're doing, be like, hey man, how do you, what do you think I should do with this thing? I've never recorded this instrument before. What should I do? You just go for it.
I mean, that's amazing though. It's amazing that you said I never had any formal training, and some of the best training is when you're just doing it, But think about that. You've got this studio that you've just so many countless musicians come through now. I was looking at the list of people, and you've worked with so many different artists, locally, regionally, nationally, and it's how cool that you were just able to figure it out because it's pretty intense. It can be very intense, right? Microphone levels and filters and levels and wow.
Yeah, I kind of a lot of the stuff I've been doing as of late, is cutting a band live in the room, and really trying to
Yeah.
capture a moment. And I really enjoy that part of it. I do it all kinds of ways, but one of what I find one of the most fulfilling things is like when you're hearing the music out of the speakers and you're like, oh, that's the record, like that's it. We're hearing it right now, like that's the vocal take. It sounds amazing. Then maybe you go
Yeah.
back and punch a line or two, or maybe you add some sugar and spice here and there. But I really like when those kind of. I just did the new Uncle Lucius record, and it was one of those where Kevin's such a great singer. I mean, all the vocals were live. The whole
I think
album.
as a listener too, that's so neat. I'm old school in the sense of I love to read liner notes. I love to see who worked with who and who collaborated, and that's kind of missing a little bit. I think it's coming back a little bit, but it's always neat to read liner notes and understand what happened. And I think when you hear something like it was recorded live in the studio like that, like it was live takes, they didn't do 20 takes of it. They said this we captured it the first time. I love reading that because it does give it a whole different feel when you listen to it. Wow, that was on the first take.
Like that's the one.
Yeah.
That's that moment in time. Um, Sometimes there'll be, you know, three takes and we listen and let's pick the best one. You know, I'd say that's more common, but it's a different way than like how some stuff, especially with Pro Tools and stuff, you can sit there and do 5 million takes of everything. I just start, I start going floating away on that. I'm
Yeah.
always trying to find something more than that. I don't know, but there's no right or wrong way to do any of it. Really, it's like really what matters is how somebody feels when they're rocking this in their car going down the road.
Right. Right.
Cool how to get there. There's a lot of ways to get there, you know.
Yeah, no one way is right or any
There's
better than
no-
another. It's what that specific combination of musicians and instruments needs at that time. And sometimes it just happens by accident and you got it. You hear it. I'm theorizing and because you live it.
You
But I
are
just,
you're right, yeah.
I just would imagine that sometimes it just happens. The magic, just like you said, that you hear that vocal track and say, that's it. That's the track.
And it's like so much less work.
Yeah, right? Right.
You're not having to go back and do vocal comping and all this stuff, but especially, if it's a band that plays live and it's this seasoned band, they play live a lot. That seems to happen a little easier.
Right, right.
Now, some sessions, man, like it may be a somebody coming in and there's session players that maybe I've put together and they've never heard this song. And when that's really cool when you get the right people together and that comes together, and you get something that you just never imagined, and you see how stoked that person is, it's a beautiful thing,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, yeah. I know. I just can only imagine. So much of what you've said is led into other questions I had in my paper series, to my interview, and because I was thinking about that. I was thinking you must network with so many people, as a producer in a studio, but as a session person, as a session musician too, people coming in and out, and you're like a matchmaker, and not a romantic matchmaker, but music. You put people together, and maybe they have their whole career together because they met at your studio, or they did something there first.
Yeah. Uh, Things like that happen sometimes. A guy I just finished an album with, I got this drummer, in fact, the same drummer that played on my album that you have there, George Duran. This guy had some songs like, I think George would be good for this. And now, George has been playing with him a lot live and ended up recording more songs. And, it's just one of those things that just happens organically and nobody's pressuring anybody too much, just,
No, no.
just let it be, It
But you
doesn't
got to
have
feel
to
good
be
about that when that
hard.
happens. When you see it happen and you know that maybe you had a hand in just introducing them and you see that it works, it's just probably got a good kind of feeling that you've helped to put some musicians together that are gonna, they really hit it off and you were part of that.
Yeah, and the other thing about that is, um, I ended up, let's say somebody comes in and they're on the session and then they might have a project they want to do and I'll end up working with them on that other it's, I guess what I'm getting at is I don't really advertise much. Most of it is word of mouth, kind of organic.
That's the best way. I mean, it really
Connections.
is. It's
Yeah.
less expensive than having to advertise for starters, but
Takes a long time to get there.
yeah,
I have people like, they're like maybe in a recording, taking classes or something, which is great, learning stuff and like, how do you get into mixing? How do you, you got it easy now because you can record, I mean, on your laptop there, you've got a whole studio.
right.
There's really no excuse to not be working on stuff, but it's like you just I never feel like that have mastered anything, man. I'm always trying to figure, it's like there's never mixing every time. It's like you try something, you learn something new, you go to a different place. It's never there's never an end to the destination, to the journey. It's like your style evolves and you hear things differently. You're going to hear things differently on certain days. Maybe what you've been doing that day or who you talked to the night before, it might influence how you're hearing things, how you might approach a mix, you know. So there is no, it's like I told the dude, I was like, man, I just like, I don't know how many times back and forth to the car listening, driving around the block listening, listen on this, listen on this, so take it home. Have somebody tell you they hate it, it sucks. Try to make it better. It just a never ending thing,
Right.
You're getting going on it.
That gets into something I was going to mention. Well, first, I just want to mention that, uh, that list of people that, I just was scrolling through, and it's a whole mix of people. I mean, I'm going to mention a couple of the names that popped out when I was looking at, Maren Morris and Ron Pope and Ed Harcourt. I used to work for Warner Bros., so I saw the band Foles that was on your list, and so there's those, but then there's so many artists that I'm sure when you hear them are so incredibly talented. They're just waiting to be in the same position to kind of get that break or to kind of have someone hear their music or to that are so talented and to that you're like, they're the next this, they're the next that. I would think so many people that,
Yeah, several of those bands you mentioned were actually on those Waxy sessions because they were,
oh, okay, okay.
I didn't make records with them. Maren Morris, she came into my old studio in the garage. This was before, I mean, she was really young.
Hmm.
Her parents brought her down. Uh, Another friend of I was engineering that, and a friend of mine was the producer on it. So sometimes those roles, I'm just always trying to just make it sound good.
Right.
He put a band together around her, and I remember when she first started singing, it's like, oh man, she's a great singer. Even when she was probably 14 or 15 years old.
Wow.
Like, wow, she's incredible in this tiny little studio, that I had at the
Right,
time.
right.
Yeah.
What a neat memory to have, like to think of then
Yeah,
to see where she's gone.
yeah, that was man, that must have been early 2000s. So I hadn't thought about that in a while. But
So it's neat. You have those people that you've seen take those steps into the industry, deeper into the industry. But then you've got these people too that are just local musicians, and you're like, they're so talented. They need someone to hear them. They just like, you looked for people to hear you when you were writing music, that they just need to be heard by the right person. And I mean, the business has changed so much too. There's not radio promotion as there used to be as much of it, not as much. You've got
Yeah.
things like South by Southwest that really is a great networking and way for people to hear Americana music, country music, and so you've got that, but it's changed so much. I used to work for one of the major 5 labels just as a sales rep and other things. And boy, I was working when it went from physical product to digital and all the things in between, and so many things that just wish had gone differently because I don't know. I just wish that, we went from working in a big office to a small office to our houses to not having jobs. It just was an evolution, and so, but it's something that, people now, they, like you said, they can make recordings at home with the home studio, and, with Pro Tools and whatever they're going to use. And it's changed so much.
Yeah, I mean, I do projects. Uh, Most of my energy has been going towards my own stuff, kind of since the pandemic. I just shifted gears, but there's a lot of stuff I'll do where, like for instance, this blues singer Megan Tubb, who I'm going to start working on an album with her when I get back from this tour. I did her last thing, and she's had the demos, great demos, to a click. So she brings those demos in. She's got a rhythm section that's really good. We lay down the rhythm section to those tracks that she's already cut. She takes that home. I like helped her get her home studio together and kind of told her, hey, you don't need to spend all this here. All you need is this, get
Right.
this good microphone. You don't, everybody says you need all this stuff, and a lot of times you don't, And so then she would record her parts there and do the guitars, and then she'd do all her harmony vocals and blah blah blah. A month later, she sends me the files. I mix it. It sounds
Wow.
like a record.
Yeah,
So
that's awesome.
that's a
awesome.
way that used to not really be a thing as
Right.
much. So
Right.
that
They
is,
came to you
I
with
think
it.
it's great.
Yeah.
I think it's great. People. I remember when I was building this studio, all I kept hearing was, "There's not going to be studios anymore. Why are you doing this big room and all this?" And I just don't even listen.
Right.
I just do.
That's background noise. It's gibberish because there's
Like
just so
whatever.
much.
Like I'm not. You got to find whatever your thing is.
Right. Right. I like to read a lot of books about musicians and producers and singers and whatever, instrumentalists, but I was reading a couple books, one was by Phil Ramone and his production things, and David Foster and some of his production stuff. And then I've got this book of, I think Billboard compiled it, of all these record producers. So it's got like maybe 200 in there, and there's just 2 or 3 pages about what they've done and a little bit of verbiage from them. But it was interesting. I think it was when I was reading Phil Ramone's book, he was just talking so much about, it's so much more than just turning knobs and producing. You're a part-time psychologist or therapist for these people when they call you in the middle of the night and they say, I've got this track in my head. I've got to record it right now. Does that ever happen? Does that something like that ever happen to you where you're like middle of the night and
No, because I wouldn't do that.
you turn your phone off, right?
I'm pretty, especially now. I mean, I'm like, here's these hours we're going to do this, and
Right.
when it gets that, I'm done.
But that's good. You got to have boundaries. You got to have
Yeah.
boundaries.
I mean, I've done plenty of sessions where you're in there till 3 in the morning and all that, and it's all fun, and I did that, and I just not interested in it anymore.
Right.
But the psychology part, oh yeah, I mean, especially, um, cutting vocals with someone. I mean, that's a real personal thing. Somebody's
Mhm.
really bearing their soul to you, and you gotta walk that line, and offer um, advice or opinions if they want it, and know when to just not say anything.
Right. Right.
I think I say less now than I used to, for the
You just
most
start
part.
to learn where people are, where their head is, or you might see someone that is very needy of answers, like they really want your answer. Then you've got someone else that they're just like, I got this, and you're trying to help them steer them a little bit, right? I mean, just the whole gamut of that probably happens. I would think. I don't know. Everybody's
Yeah,
different.
everybody's different, you know. There's one guy I was working with recently, you know, he just sent me iPhone demos of the songs, and then like my job is to like turn that iPhone demo into a full, you know, production.
Right.
It takes a lot out of you. You know,
I can only imagine. Yeah.
so I usually start with bringing a rhythm section in and having him kind of scratch vocal and guitar along with it, and then I'll flesh it out and then have him come in and cut his vocals. You know, that's one way to do it.
Yeah. One of the things I read too is, and I thought was very interesting, because you talk about how personal the voice is, and someone's bearing their soul when they're singing. I always thought just that lyrics were always a taboo, that a producer wasn't in a place where they would end up, offering a different lyric. And some of these producers were saying, we changed lyrics with these people. I said to this person, it didn't fit. And I talked them into something else. And I thought that was very interesting, because I always thought that was just that unwritten wall between, lyrics, sounds and everything, but that was interesting to me, that some of these producers were saying, hey, I even suggested an alternate lyric, because it just from my own experience, I thought that they might need this lyric differently, and they would be taken up on it many times.
Sure, that happens. You know, it's usually something small. Maybe sometimes it's even maybe a different, you know, a simple phrase or something just to turn it a little differently. Maybe it
Right,
flows a little better. But yeah, there's no, you know, it just that is really artist dependent.
right, right,
Some people have it nailed down, and that's the way it is.
right.
Respect that, you know.
Of course. Yeah,
Some people are like, man, what do you think of this? What do you think of this line? Is that line cool? And I'm like, what you tried? Maybe try this word. What does that sound? You know, maybe
yeah,
they have stuff they're unsure about.
yeah.
So,
It's neat when they kind of let you into their world a little bit, and you get to kind of maybe just offer some, just based on all that you do with your own songwriting and all that you do with the production you've done in the past, that when they're open, it's kind of nice to be asked for an opinion.
sure. Yeah.
So I want to talk about the new album, because I could
All
actually
right.
production questions all night, and I'm really fascinated by the
Well,
whole
we can get
process.
into it on that too.
Yeah. So
With the-
so I'm sure we will, right? Yeah. So Nowhere to Land coming out next week, right? It's next Friday, a week from this Friday, I
yeah,
believe.
that just kind of hit me that is the truth.
I didn't mean to make you stressed
Yeah.
out about it
No,
all.
it's all good, man. I gotta own it. But yeah.
Yeah. So, how did you decide on the title for the album? I mean, I know you have a track on the album called Nowhere to Land, but when you're looking at all your tracks and everything, how did you decide what you're gonna put out in front like that, as far as the title of the album?
Um, my daughter, I was talking to my daughter one night, and she was like, we were talking about album titles, and we were talking about what about, you know, title tracks? What one of these songs? And she's like, I really like Nowhere to Land. And I was like,
Oh,
and I sat with it for a while, and it just kept sticking. It just kept coming back up. I
yeah,
feel like it kind of encapsulated the whole feeling of the album, you know, because there's a lot of those songs were written like right when COVID started happening and nobody knew what in the hell was going on, and it was like
right,
really like, oh, is this the apocalypse, you know?
right, yeah,
Uncertainty and stuff. There's a lot of themes of that on there, and it just fit for me, you know. I liked how it sounded. I ran it by some people, and everybody, you know, because you know it's real easy to get caught up in a bubble doing this stuff, but you
yeah,
have people you trust, and you know, like, what do you think of this? You know, maybe casually, and like everybody, most people are just like, I like it, it's cool, you know. It's like, all right, yeah,
yeah. It's interesting how I'm always fascinated by how that process. I kind of like ride the ride along with musicians, but I've never, like I'm on that journey, but I've never, bolted out of it to do. I write songs. I used to write a lot of song titles just to
hmm
get something to write off of sometimes.
hmm
As a, and then I'm always fascinated by album titles too. And I'm always fascinated when artists will sometimes, they won't have a song called that goes with that track, that the name of it, but you'll hear that phrase in one of their songs. It won't be
Yeah.
the chorus, it won't be, but you'll hear them say those 3 or 4 words in one of the songs.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And that song was one I've been playing. It's one of those songs that I wrote pretty quick, and it just kind of flowed out, and I liked it. I liked the
Yeah,
feel of it.
you felt good about it. Yeah,
Felt good. It just felt natural to me. And the song is kind of about, just I just say it's about having empathy for someone that maybe you can't totally relate to what they're going through, but it's finding that empathy, for
right,
their hardship.
right.
Yeah.
And that's what's always so neat about songwriting too, is that you know why you wrote a song, you know the reason, and it's always interesting maybe to hear people that come and hear you in live try to tell you what is the song about this, or just the fact that people can get a different meaning out of a song that's fine for them. It wasn't maybe your intended message in the song or the intended reason, but they pulled something even deeper than for them own personal life, you know? Or maybe it was based on your issue and got even deeper than the empathy. It got deeper than that. It was a personal experience that they listen to your song all the time because it really drives home with them.
That's a that's a when somebody tells me something like that, that's a real heartstring puller.
Yeah.
That's what, if you're having a tough day and somebody says something like that, that'll keep you going.
Yeah, for sure. That's just that's always I have to imagine that's just amazing when, or to see someone singing, the regulars who come to your shows, you go to a city and they see you and they're in your own town and they come and see you all the time and you see them singing the lyrics to your song. That's gotta be a cool thing too. It, appreciating your song, telling you they appreciate it for this reason because it means this to me or it means that to me, and then also seeing them singing along with you from the stage.
Another on to that point of the singing along, I've had songs like when I feel like I know I'm hitting on a song that I feel like, okay, I'm gonna record this. There's been times when I played them live and people that have never, because I'm going to cold audiences pretty, a lot, and I have to try to warm it up. And the only way I found that works for me is just to kind of just be myself and be as honest as I can, and talk about the songs and stuff and not try to be anything but that. And it took me a while to get there. But if I see, I'll have things where I'll see somebody, by the third chorus, they're singing. I can see them that they know the chorus. First time they ever heard it, so that tells me, okay, that's this. I'm gonna flesh this one out.
It's a catchy song. They're singing along with it. It's catchy. Yes.
I
Mhm.
mean, I love a good hook. I mean, I love a chorus. I love a 2.5 minute pop song as much as anything. I love the craft of it.
I
Uh,
love my favorite part is the bridge. I love writing a bridge because it's different than the verse and the chorus. I love making a bridge, and I'm so worried about sounding like someone else just because I listen to so many different types of music all the time, and I'm always worried about sounding like someone else that I try so hard to make that bridge so different. It really just pops as a whole different way than whatever the chord structure was. It's funny how I do that because I'm so worried that so
yeah, yeah, nothing like a good middle eight.
I love that part. Yeah.
I think I got
Um,
them on more than half of the songs I would think on that album. Not
yeah.
every song, but more than not, I think. I'm trying to think about it, but yeah.
I just enjoy that part of the process is finding something that just completely steps away from whatever the chord structure was, in the song. It's
It's
just kind
almost
of
like
fun.
I was I saw an interview, maybe I read it or saw it, but it was with Mike Campbell, and he was talking about that, like talking about bridges and talking about how, yeah, he looks at it, it's like the bridge kind of sums up.
Really?
I mean, and I really agreed with that because it's like if you've got something that your song's about, then you get to the bridge and maybe it finds some resolve or it just kind of kind of wraps it up a little bit, you know.
That's really interesting, and when you say that,
I don't want to quote Mike Kim. I'm 99% sure it was him that said that, and I agreed with that, and I related to that.
yeah. He's quite the session musician too. I mean, like he's of course with the Heartbreakers, but I mean, like he did so many. He's got a band of his own now, I think, right now, and then he's done some other things with different bands as far as his studio work. You see his name in credits and a lot of things.
Yeah, he's a monster.
Yeah, yeah.
One of my
Um,
rock and roll guitar players, like one of my favorites. I just think there's so many memorable little simple melody lines that somebody just starting guitar could play, you know?
Sometimes it's less is more, right? Less is
It
more
doesn't
sometimes.
matter. It's like I personally would rather hear that. I love little statements like that more than somebody maybe more flashy, but that's just me.
Right, right.
I appreciate it, but you know, I'm always like amazed at something simple and powerful and memorable. I'm always trying to strive for that, Whether
Sure.
I'm getting, I don't know, but I'm looking for it.
Since we're talking about a couple of different musicians, I just want to step away for one quick second about the record and just ask you because I was reading, in your bio, so many how fortunate or how neat it is that so many people have compared your style of writing to some really big names in the industry, and like I think Jackson Brown and some of these legendary songwriters. I think that someone mentioned Springsteen, but they mentioned these different people who are just, you know, who do you when you said you were doing all those rock tunes all those years, for a while you were in a rock band. Who were some of the people that you were listening to, um, or that you really in the rock world, in the pop world?
Um, Big Star, I mean, during that, I love anything from the Replacements and Big Star and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
Hmm.
I love all those artists you mentioned, good 80s radio rock. I love, um, that's always one of those hard questions because I listen to so many different types of things all the
Right.
time.
Right.
Like the last 3 days, I've listened to nothing but Nina Simone Sings the Blues record.
Wow. Yes. Yes.
So it's like yeah,
That's what makes music so interesting is that when some people are just into one genre of music, but how neat it is to explore all the genres, like people do. When I was younger, I would work in record stores, and that's how I learned so many different styles that I would have never touched because everybody would bring their own music into play, and they would play these albums that I would have never heard. I think, as a matter of fact, it's probably how I first heard the Replacements. Don't Tell a Soul. I think that one record, and I know they went back earlier. Pleased to Meet, all those earlier ones, but I think the first time I heard the Replacements was because someone played the record in the record store when I was working, and so many you get a melting pot of all these different genres that people listen to, and
yeah. I mean, any 60s rock and roll, I love. 50s rock and roll, I love. I mean, Buddy Holly, I don't know, the Kinks, Muswell Hillbilly's probably one of my favorite records. I can always go to. You know, that's pretty vast. Lots of stuff. And I try to listen to new stuff a lot too. Like a buddy of mine sent me an artist today called Kazi Valaza, I think. She's from Portland. And it's like, God, it's so good. She's got a real kind of Joni Mitchell, kind of Laurel Canyon. He meets Joni Mitchell vibe. Really well done, really well recorded. Um, I was helping my daughter learn a Clairo song the other day, and we were working on a Lana Del Rey song, and I love all that. So
yeah.
I think I try to always be getting new sounds going into my mind.
I tried, especially when I was working with a record label. I was always trying to hear, I always wanted to stay current. I didn't want to ever become like my parents or so and say, "Oh, that's
Exactly.
kids." I always tried so hard not to, and I find as I get a little older, some things, but that's because if you're not listening, like your ears aren't attuned to all everything else around you. If you're just listening to the flavor of the week on the radio or something, yeah, you're gonna be like does anybody could make good music, but there's so much good music on
Oh,
YouTube
that's the
and
thing.
other,
I think
so
that's
much
a
out
really
there.
lazy, people are really lazy. When I hear people say there's no good music, it's like that is that is ridiculous. You know,
Right.
there's so much good
Yes.
stuff out there. I think it's a real lazy way to look at it myself, but
Yes.
and like my dad growing up, all he ever said was he stopped at Bo Diddley, and then he never went beyond that. Never cared about the Beatles. He always used to say, one day the big beat's going to come back, and don't get me wrong, I love Bo Diddley, I love those records, but
But see, here's the thing though, but he got to play maracas on the stage with Bo Diddley. I would think that that would
he
be a big
did,
thing that would be,
he did. That was at the Whispering Pines in Noxubee County, Mississippi, and
yeah.
he always told me that story growing up, and I never knew if it was true or not because it is a great story.
Yeah.
I have since had that story corroborated, and it did happen.
That's so awesome. That's so
Yeah,
neat.
so awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow. That's so neat.
yeah.
Um, when you talked before, you said you sat down and wrote 30 or 40 songs this one period in your life when you were kind of going from you built that small studio in the garage and everything. You talk about sat down and just started writing stuff. When
Mhm.
you put this album together, did you find yourself having to whittle it down to 10 songs, or did you find yourself writing a few more to add on to what you really felt was good?
Oh man, I was sitting on a pile, and I still am. My pile is large right now. I started. I switched gears in like 2020. I just completely switched gears in my life, and really got serious about like I was talking about earlier. Writing. Just really honing in on the songs themselves because you couldn't go anywhere, play anywhere. So it's like I want to make stuff that sounds killer. Me sitting here by myself. I want to get better at finger picking. I sat there and just practiced for months, like practicing Deep River Blues, Doc Watson, just over and over and over. And every morning, I still play. It's the first thing I play when I get up in the morning because it just keeps me warmed up. But when I first started like learning that stuff, it's like I'm never going to be able to play this style. Now I've written several, lot more finger picking songs and stuff. I love that because it's like making a rhythm and a melody at the same time, and it's interesting. So I mix it up live with some strumming stuff and some finger picking stuff, and I kind of got off tangent there. But
That's
what it is,
okay. No,
but I had written, I wrote a bunch of songs. And when I started recording them, I just started recording. I couldn't get a band in the studio because this was when like you couldn't do that.
right.
I mean, and so it's like, well, either I'm going to sit around and wait, or I'm going to just do because I've always made records with having the guys in the room and you play together and you work it out.
Sure.
I said, or I'm gonna adapt and I'm gonna do it a different way. And that's what I did. So I just started recording the songs that I was feeling at the time, and I made grooves on a loop. I'd kind of make loops in Pro Tools and mangle the tones and kind of make it kind of my own sound to get a cool sound or something that's a little inspiring.
Yeah.
And I would just cut the acoustic and vocal to get, live to that loop. And my goal was to make it where if somebody came in tomorrow and put a gun to my head and said, you have to release this like this solo, that I would be okay with it.
Right. Okay.
Because
Sure.
it's
Sure.
like this song would fly like this. So those 10 are the ones that I did, and these feel like an idea to me, like a cornucopia, or whatever, like a piece of work, and so I got them all to that point, where it's like, okay,
Yeah.
I dig this as it is, and then I brought in first person I brought in was George Durant on drums. We laid drums on everything in one day,
Wow.
all the 10 songs, because he's playing to that loop, so it's locked in, solid. you know. And so these guys had heard the songs in an acoustic form. So then it's kind of building it backwards. It's like, what's the least amount of stuff that I can put on here to not step on this core, you know?
Yeah.
So it's pretty minimal, actually. It's always tempting to add more layers and all this, and sometimes that's fun, but I didn't want to do that on this. I wanted to keep it as open as possible, you know? So it pretty much sticks with that throughout. You know, then I bring in, like, I had Betty Sue come in and sing harmonies on it, and she was coming in to sing on one song, and it like sounded so, our voices just really worked, and it sounded so good. And I ordered some food or something. I was like, "You want to sing on this one?" She's like, "Yeah, I sang on that one." Next thing you know, she sang on the whole thing. You know, all the
That's
songs.
fantastic. That's really neat when you lock in of a harmony like that and you feel
She's
it.
so good. She's so good. You know, just add it. It just took it to another thing. You know,
Oh,
and
how neat. Yeah.
brought in a couple other players. You know, just to add some little touches here and there. But I wanted to not get too far away from, you know, I kind of didn't want it to get too big. You know, I wanted it to sound intimate somehow.
Right.
I think I might have done it, but I'm not positive.
Well,
You
too, I
know,
mean, probably a lot of that too when you go out and do your solo shows and everything. I would imagine sometimes it's just you and a guitar, and other times you got a band. I would imagine. Do you do both kind of things, like a band, and then sometimes
or
just you and
solo. This whole tour I'm doing solo.
really? Okay, so like
Yeah,
you kind of have that in your mind, and you don't want it to be.
gotta
I mean,
work.
yeah,
Gotta work. You know, I
yeah,
mean, song has to carry it.
right,
You know, and you know, it also stems a little bit from when you're in bands and you're younger and you go to a studio, because I'd recorded in plenty of other studios too, you know, and learned a lot from those experiences. And one of the things that always seems to happen is you spend all this time doing getting all the guitars and the drums and this, and then it's like, oh, we have a half, all right, let's do all the vocals now. You know, 2 hours or whatever. It's like
right,
that's the main thing that people are going to lock in on. You know, and
yeah,
I
yeah,
make that mistake a lot. It's like get the vocals, like get the song, that's the thing. You
right,
know,
right.
so at least in how I'm looking at this music. Um, so yeah, it worked out in that way for that.
With
I'm
these
already
10 songs,
on my album, you know, I've already got like 10 more songs
that's great.
recorded.
That's a great place to be, right? To have more stuff ready to so that it goes for a
Yeah,
while and keeps you interested in trying some new songs out. And
but that's my plan. You know, for years it's always been like make album, do all this stuff. 2 years have gone by. Oh, let's make another album. Oh, we got to write 10 songs. You
right,
know, and that's not a really, I don't, I'm not going back to that. You know, I'm sitting on a 3 or 4 albums worth of stuff right now, you know, that I play live and that I feel good about. Just a bunch of songs, you know, so it's like, I'm just going to just start constantly recording and just see what happens. You know, maybe
yeah,
I'll
yeah,
throw out an EP quickly after this album comes out, or maybe a couple of singles, or I just think that it's wide open now what you can do. And, you know, it's real easy to get caught up in like, no, you gotta, but nothing, you know, you gotta just make the album. And then I get that, but I don't know. I think you got to adapt a little bit.
all the rules are out the door. The rules are out the door
Yeah.
anymore because it's not the physical product has gone so much, and you've got the internet where people and you start to reach people that maybe you would have never reached without the internet. In different parts of the world, and people are in a situation. There's so much music at their fingertips that to stay in their head to stay in their ears with your music. It is nice to throw an EP out or a couple tracks, or here's the people who really start to follow you, even if it's from an internet way. Maybe they'll never be able to get to where you're playing live, but maybe they'll hear you on the internet and to gravitate towards your website and towards other things, and to always have, oh, I got a new song, and that keeps them interested, something new.
And I know, you know, like case in point today, uh, you know, like you heard that Elton John track I threw up. Sometimes I'll throw up a cover every now and then just because it's fun, you know? And it's loose. And I think it's good to keep that mindset a little bit in the social media stuff. Try not to get too hung up on all the competitiveness of it, but
Absolutely.
so try to keep it fun. I know it's hard sometimes, but you know, you have these people that maybe are following along, commenting, and some guys like, "Hey, you should come play North Carolina." And I'm like, "Oh, that'd be cool." I don't know, And
Yeah.
then this morning, that one guy saw that Wichita lineman I did, and he goes, "Hey, I just bought tickets to your show in Asheville." Just
See?
just little. I think for me, like how I'm, what's working for me is it's a slow burn, one-on-one kind of connections, and I just try to be open with people, and I don't know, it's like I keep saying slow burn, but it is it is. There's no limo coming to. It used to be you wait around. I call it limo limbo. Wait around on the limo.
I like that. I like that a
South
lot.
by Southwest, you wait on the limo to come. They're gonna, it's like, nah, it ain't gonna happen, man.
But there's a good chance, I mean, I don't want to speak for you, but maybe sometimes you enjoy it more now because you don't have those restrictions of all that. You just do what you want. I'm going to play a song. You're not worried about where you're enjoying playing live, you're enjoying writing, you're enjoying working with musicians, in a production sense, and just let it go where it goes without any
Yeah,
pretenses.
I mean, I just want to make the best stuff that I can, and I'll
Mhm.
work it until I get there.
Yeah.
I mean, this album, I know that I've said I like off the cuff stuff, and I do, but also I think I mixed this record 3 times, and then I got like sometimes I'll start listening to an album and I'll get really hung up on it, and so then it influences me, And I was trying to figure out how to approach the ambience of this album, uh, like how wet do I want the vocals? What is my tonal palette here, for like the
Yeah.
paint this. And I was sitting here one day and an article popped up and it was about car wheels on the gravel road, Lucinda Williams, which is such a
Oh, yeah, yeah,
great.
yeah. Mhm.
And I haven't listened to that record in a while. And I put it on and it is just bone dry and it's so good. It's very direct sounding, there's no veil. And I was like, it hit me like a ton of bricks. It's like, that's what I'm good. That's a feel that I'm going to go for with this because I feel like this album is about kind of maybe stark circumstances here and there and those kind of feelings. I think it would work. And so I mixed it the dry. I mean, it was crushing me, because I'm so used to like putting some sweet plate reverb on the vocals,
Right.
and sweetening things up. And I was going against everything that my instincts normally tell me to do and just turn the vocals up louder than I normally, just freaking myself out and like
Yeah.
crazy. But I going through all this drama, in my mind, and I mixed it like that, sent it off, got it mastered, everything, it's done. It's supposed to come out. It was supposed to come out 8 months ago, uh, and then it kept getting delayed, and I didn't listen to it in a while, and I put it on, and I was like, all of a sudden, it was like, it feels a little dry. It feels a little too like it wasn't pulling me in to the music. So I went in and did some crazy trickery of like running the whole mix through a plate reverb, printing the return of the plate, blending that in with the instrumental mix, and making it. I redid the whole thing and just added just a touch of ambient. It wasn't much, but just a little bit of more ambience to it, and then I'm done. I sent that off. And then I realized that there was a couple of lines I didn't like, so I punched a couple of lyrics. I didn't like how I phrased a couple of things. That time thing. If it had came out 8 months ago, it would have been done. But I had the opportunity to fix a couple of things that were bothering me, and I just went in and did it. I mean, I decided to fix them, and I don't know where we were going with that, but I guess I was going with you do it till you're stoked.
Yeah, I mean, we were just kind of saying
Got to
too,
be stoked. You got to believe in. I got to go out there and
yeah,
and be able to believe in what I'm doing.
yes, and
You
not
know,
get too hung up on, you made some adjustments and you were able to, and he's like you said, it's hard. It's hard to not, because you're a producer and you're producing things and you're thinking about all those things. That's always, like you said, go around the block, listen to it again. And, you know, it could be in a
yeah.
very obsessive type of thing to listen to it over and over and really find it. But you did something that you're like, okay, I'm going to let it just ferment here for a while, and then let it soak for a while. And then you had those 8 months, made a couple adjustments,
There you go.
and we got what we're listening to now. I mean, I really enjoy the album. I gotta tell you, you know how sometimes you get hooked on the first song because that's where you're starting to. Oh, that leads to one other question. First of all, you've been very generous with your time. I just have a couple more questions for you about the album because I want to get people excited about your album
Oh, please do,
specifically.
yeah. Of
And so
course.
I just have a couple more quick questions for you. But I just wanted to ask you, the sequencing of the album. You picked the 10 songs. You said these are the 10 songs. Did it, back in the days of the vinyl and everything, and people go on iTunes or wherever they're Spotify and they just randomly pick things.
Mhm.
How important was it to you as a musician and a songwriter to sequence the songs? Did you sequence them in a
Oh,
way that you felt it fit together, or
it was hugely important, and
right?
I mean, I always, every time I sequence anything, if it's an album, I'm thinking about side A and side B.
Right.
Even in a digital world, because at least it gives you a little bit of like break, a way to break it up a little bit and think about it as a thing, and there is vinyl of this album. So
That's great.
I'm supposed to have any day now. I'm praying that they're going to be ready for I go on the road. Um, I haven't even test press it, but um, so yes, sequence is, I played with it a lot, and there's some physical things about it. With vinyl, you don't want to put your loudest track at the end of a side because you're not going to get the same fidelity at the end of a side.
Interesting. I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Yeah, you can look it up and read about
That's
it.
really interesting. I never, I never thought about that. I'm always
Yeah,
thinking, oh, the big song is near the front, but not about the sound as far as,
it
oh, you
is.
can't put that near the inner groove. That's interesting.
And also you want the shorter the sides, the better it sounds. So you can't go over, I think it's 22 with a lacquer master. Uh, I think this one maybe comes in at 18 a side, so it should, Lord willing, it's going to sound real nice. But
Yeah.
I mixed it all off half-inch tape, you know, for that sound. So yes, I do think about the sequence, and it changed a bit. And again, I know I mentioned my daughter earlier, but she really helped me with that sequence. I like to trust somebody out of the process on that.
And you gotta trust family. You gotta trust family. That's your daughter.
You know what I mean?
That's
But
neat. That's
I like how she thinks about music, how she talks about music. I think she really feels it deeply, and so when she had some strong opinions on it, I listened.
that's great. That's really neat. That's so neat. So neat.
'Cause I had, starting off with the loudest, fastest song. She's like, no, start off with the vibey song, So
Right.
that, yeah.
Um, I can't help but think of Tom Petty's Full Moon Fever when he did his first solo album as the non Heartbreaker project. It was just Tom Petty, and I don't know if you've heard that album straight through, but he's on the CD. He goes, "This is the place where you would turn over if you were listening to it because it was all CD at that time for the most part. I mean, records were out there, but they weren't doing too much
Mhm.
record wise. The big pop bands and he was like, this is the point in the record where in the CD where you'd be flipping at his cows mooing and geese and everything in the background. This is where you'd be turning over your record right now if you had a record player. But since it's a CD, and he goes in this whole little, it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
You talk about thinking about side A and side B.
Yeah, it just helps kind of break it up a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
Also, I think, the vinyl also put a physical cap on how many songs because, all right, you want to do 18 songs, now you're going to be paying for a double album.
Right, right.
Double the cost of everything, you
Well,
know.
and when CDs came
That's
out,
stuff
they
I
were
got to
thinking,
think about.
right, right. when the CDs came out, they were saying, "Oh, 72 minutes." I think people felt the pressure of having to get fill 72 minutes of music, and some of that stuff was
Yeah,
filler, right?
totally. I'd rather have, I mean, let me think about the one I was listening to today. Everybody knows this is nowhere. 8 songs.
Wow, yeah. See, and they're
You
eight good
know,
songs, right? That's the thing. You better have eight good songs
every
than 20 fillers.
every second of that is great.
Uh, so, um, so yeah, um, I wanted to just ask you this about Cherry Sunburst appears to be like the song that kind of was out there. I mean, again, things have changed. Again, the radio single days of all that, that's also different. But that was a song that seemed to be kind of out in front on promotion for the album.
It's the first single that came out, and I didn't, I didn't have a super strong opinion on the single, uh, but like a couple of people that I'm working with on this separately mentioned that song. You know what I mean, without talking to one another.
Right.
So I look at that, you know. Uh, so that's the first single that has come out. Yeah, it just came out last week. So not it hadn't even been out a week yet, or maybe a little over a week. But yeah,
So you were kind of hearing it from a couple of different places, and you were kind of like, okay, let's put that
I
out there.
like it. It's a good riff rocker. It's. I think it's got a good chorus, and uh, it's probably not about what people would think it would be about. I wrote it about in West Point where I grew up. There was a music store there called Wilson's Music, and Harold Wilson was the proprietor of the store. And I used to go in there. I wanted to go in there every day after school and just hang out and look at all the guitars and stuff. And there was that. I remember him having that acoustic J45. It was the cherry sunburst color. Um, and his son and I ended up being in a band together later. And his son still has the guitar.
Huh.
It's a 60s J45 cherry sunburst.
Right.
And I've always loved that. I've always been obsessed with that guitar. It's just like every time I ever get to play, it's like this is the best acoustic I've ever touched. But like I feel like that guitar like had a lot to do with me even wanting to play as a kid, like seeing that thing and
Yeah.
just so cool. And here I am, a few years ago, I go into a music store here in town, and there was one of those hanging on the wall, and it just it was just like it was on fire, and so the song is kind of a play on that, about that guitar and how it infiltrated my common sense.
Funny how you said that because now I think back to some of the lyrics, and I mean, you had talked about the Sunburst earlier in our conversation, just a brief mention of a Sunburst guitar, and then when you really mentioned about it, now I'm thinking back to some of the lyrics and say, okay, now I see, now I know
I
where
mean,
that's going.
listen to it again now, and you may catch some more of that.
Yeah, there's a couple of things. That's great. That's great. Uh,
Yeah.
do you if Cherry Sunburst was not the song that you heard people, a couple of different parties buzzing about, or even if it was, what is there if you had 5 minutes to convince someone that, you know, your songs are, they got to listen to more of it, to convince them, listen to everything, what would be the first song you'd put in front of them? Would it be that song? Or is there a song on the album that, I mean, I know they kind of all become your children in a sense, right? Every song that you release, so it's hard to put one in front of another, probably. Probably, I don't want to put words in your mouth again, but
Um, I've been thinking about that because trying to figure out what song we're going to push next. Something keeps telling me after the storm, and the reason is I've just had people like react with me about that song out in the wild. I'd put it online, just a live stream version of it or something. I threw up a clip and this it was in Chicago. And
really,
a fireman at the Chicago Fire Department messaged me and it's like, hey, just wanted to let you know that we've kind of made that the theme song at the fire department. Like we've been listening, he's
wow,
been playing up the thing. And it wasn't even out, it's not even out yet. This is a year or so ago. And that was real touching to me.
yeah, yeah, that's amazing.
I was like, wow, man. And then I'm playing a gig one day Uh, and I played that song and I talk about it before I play it. And this guy comes up to me because I wrote it after the ice storm in 2021. So it's a little bit about the ice storm, but it's also about the whole world was kind of on fire at that time. So many things. It
Yes.
was all piling down on us, you know. So it's kind of a song like we're gonna get through all this somehow,
Right.
you know. Uh, it was inspired by the ice storm initially because it got pretty apocalyptic here during that time. But I played the song. This guy comes up to me afterwards and he goes, uh, "Hey, I'm the professor of like." And he was like, uh, "I want to, I want to like use that song as like a theme song for my climate studies and stuff because I thought you really captured the feeling of that storm and everything, you know." And he was good. He's like kind of pushed that song out to something. I'm not quite sure, but it sounded pretty cool.
Yeah.
You know, it was a neat, an unexpected way that a song like that reaches someone. You know.
And it's neat because once again, there's so many ways someone can reach one of your songs because of all the different technology and ways we listen to music now, and that someone can hear it that maybe wouldn't have heard it, and can give you direct feedback because of
And you know what I'll do when it comes out? I will go in and I will dig through every message, however long it takes me. I'm going to find that guy, just those two people I'm talking about initially, and I
yeah,
will write them a letter, and I'll send them both the song. You know, I mean, this is what I'm going to do. That's what you have to do.
that's really neat. I mean, as I talk to you tonight, I mean, just I could just tell you're really a classy musician. I mean, like you're I can tell you're a good person. Like you care about your fans, you care about the music process, you care about the people that you mentor in production, and just your stories. It just lends it. It's something you take seriously. You take the human experience seriously. If I could tell that from our conversation tonight, and that's a neat thing you would do.
I will definitely, yes. I mean, otherwise, why are we doing this? You know, it's got to be that way.
I just want to ask you one last question. I noticed that you are on a lot of different media platforms. Which one do you think that people interact with you the most in, or where someone listening to this interview in the future should kind of find you doing the most of your interacting or writing or putting things on their videos, songs?
Man, I kind of hit all of them equally, honestly. Uh, I've been liking TikTok. I feel like it's looser. Sometimes I'll throw stuff on there that I don't throw anywhere else, like just real off the cuff kind of things, you know. I've had more real life things that turned into real life things off there than anything else. I'll give
Huh.
you an example. Uh, there's a lady on there, she runs an artist retreat in outside of Lafayette, Louisiana. She has like 10 acres and cabins on there, and it's just the most beautiful place by the bayou, you know, you've ever seen. And she was following me on there and keeping up with what I was doing, you know, just commenting on there and stuff. And she saw I was playing in Baton Rouge. This is not my show coming up in Baton Rouge, but like a few months ago. And she messaged me and goes, "Hey, would you like to stay at the cottage, you know, when you come through?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I mean that'd be cool. Like how much is it?" So she goes, "No, no, it's free for your I'm
Wow.
a fan of your music." And so I go there and I had 2 days there to hang out, and it's just like I didn't want to leave that place.
Hmm.
And I want to go make a record. There's what I'm going to do. I'm going to record stuff in that cabin 'cause it sounds amazing. It's like this old wood thing, and you're just in the middle of nowhere in Louisiana. It's perfect. But you know, she just like anytime you want to come here, you have like full run whenever you want to come. It's the sweetest thing
Wow.
ever.
Hmm.
You know,
That's really nice. I mean, that's really,
I
and
mean, that just came out of a little comment thing. You know, like that's why I just just be genuine with people.
yeah. JM, I really appreciate your time tonight. You know, it was really a pleasure to talk to you in so many different parts of the music world and our shared love for music and the different things that we see and hear in the industry and just the sheer love of just playing or singing and the human experience intertwined in all of that.
Yeah, never want to lose that.
Yeah. So I thank you so much. I look forward to the formal release of the record. I feel it's a privilege to get to hear a couple songs in advance. Like I had that privilege to do that. I think it's always so neat to do that. And then when it comes out and the rest of the world
It's
starts to
real.
listen.
It'll be real next week.
Yeah, yeah. So I wish you the best of luck with your release and with your upcoming tour. And I hope we can talk again sometime.
Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate you having me.
Thank you.